finest ingredients are right in the mix.
Hello everyone and welcome to this week's Spelkult. I hear myself very annoying. This week we speak English because we have a guest from Denmark, and we agreed that our language barrier is too large to do this in Swedish or Danish, for that matter. Can you present yourself with 2 sentences?
Can you hear us?
Peter?
Hear me?
Yeah,
Yep.
Hi. Yeah, the sound was just lagging a bit.
Okay.
How are you?
Hi. You come from Alexandria, the project who documents...
I think I'm
different-
missing sound. I can only see one person. I'm sorry.
Okay, we go on. Besides him, we have Markenroth-Nordström
Do a bit
from
reconnect.
Spelkults redaktion. And down to the right, we have Daniel Roos, head editor in Spelkult. And we also have Carl Bergström with us, but he's not in picture. I think Daniel is fixing this right now.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Back, okay. I just told the audience that you are a manager of Alexandria that documents different role-playing scenarios and LARP scenarios and board game something. You will get the chance to explain this later. So, and for the audience that can't see us right now, we can tell you that you can watch us later on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. You can also hear us on different places where you download podcasts if you prefer that way. And now we have Carl in picture too. Welcome. Say hello to the audience.
Adjustments are being made.
Something weird's going on.
I think something broke with his...
Maybe we should start to discuss what we have played this week.
Yep.
Spelat i veckan.
I haven't been
Things
so
have
lucky
broken.
Let's go over to things we're playing right now. I forgot. Before we're going there, I have to make an celebration because we reached 800 subscribers on on YouTube. Prayers! I really have to get
for you viewers that aren't familiar with Spelkult, we are non-profit organization, a bunch of friends who play test, we write reviews, we do everything that has with the gaming culture to do. Just fun, and we do it mainly in Swedish. So this is a test for us to do something in English, actually. And lately we have started to do more and more video content. So to have 800 followers on YouTube is quite large for us. So now we're aiming for 1,000 or 1 million. Yeah.
That will be the day.
Yeah. So what do we see here? It's a role-playing scenario.
I see Johan Röcklander. Very happy.
Yeah. 3 of us in Spelkult has joined a quite large project. It's a role-playing project based on Mutant Year Zero. And it's a guy called Erik that has started this project with like 5 role-playing groups by himself, and then a bunch of other groups connected to this project. So we are...
He doesn't have a day job.
He seems to not have a day job. So almost every day, all week long, he plays those groups and connect those groups together.
And I thought I was extreme.
We started the first session 0 this Monday, and tomorrow we will start the actual play. And I'm recording our session, so I hope that we can put it together somehow and get it out. It depends on the quality of the project. Not our playing quality, but the
Yeah, there's nothing to be done about that.
No, it's not. And I don't have high hopes either.
And then I also want to get a shout out to our Twilight 2000 session, which will have a sequel now, whatever you say, this Tuesday. It was postponed. And we also have someone who has played Dune.
This is me. Believe it or not, I come fresh from a 6-player game of Dune, the board game. And I wasn't even supposed to be here because usually these run for maybe 8 turns. But 4 turns in, a treacherous alliance between the Harkonnen and the Emperor took Arrakeen from under my nose and managed to win the game. As you know, it's a very, very early game. I think it came out in '79. Very, very good. And before its time, they fixed almost nothing of the game's problems when they created the new one in order to be true to the original. So it's still a very, very unstable romp rather than the more chess or race-like games of contemporary game design. So it can last anywhere from 60 to 240 minutes and ends on single decisions being made hastily as people gamble for victory. But it is a treat because it's a rare asymmetric gem where everyone has different powers and so on. And of course, you very rarely see games with 6 players that have the intestinal fortitude to play this game. You can get beginners, but you rarely get people twice unless they're really grognards.
Okay. And then we have this strange slide.
I mean, no one has missed, but this is what I'm playing. I'm playing Wordle. And this is, if anyone doesn't know this is like Mastermind, but with words. You're supposed to guess a 5-letter word, and you get green squares if you put 1 letter in the right position, and yellow squares if you put the right letter in the wrong position. And you have 6 guesses to get the word right. And
is it a computer game or?
This is an online game, which is just website based. It's free. There are no ads, so that's very nice about it. The only thing that's really annoying is that people keep posting these kinds of pictures on social media, which is like, okay, good for you for playing the game, but this is so uninteresting. I like the game, but I get annoyed by people posting this. Fun fact though about Wordle: there is an app called Wordle with an exclamation mark that is a bit older than the web-based game. So the app was created by a guy named Steven Kravotta. I had to write this down. And the web-based game is created by a guy named Josh Wordle. So Steven Kravotta suddenly found that his app was being downloaded by people who thought that this was like the hyped Wordle game. So he started making money all of a sudden with an old app that he wasn't even developing anymore. But he actually contacted Josh Wordle and said, you know, I'm making a lot of money right now from this old app. What do you say I donate all this money to a reading project in America? So actually, he started making money for something that he thought he shouldn't be making money of it, and donated all of it. So that's a really nice story connected to this game, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then we played Augustus. This is a game from 2013. It was nominated for Spiel des Jahres, and we thought it was really meh. And this is bingo. Just, you know, you draw tiles from a bag and you move meeple around, and then you like bingo. But we played it with 2 people, and I think it's not really designed for 2 people. So maybe we should give it another try. But our first impression was really just, okay.
I must ask, Maria, you play lots of board games.
Yep.
Doesn't that add to the feeling that games often feel?
Well,
because I felt that when I played much digital games, that it must be extremely good for me to enjoy them.
I mean, I have gotten to the point where not always, but often when I play a game, I feel, okay, this is something that I've played before.
Yeah.
Games don't really feel unique. And one thing I'm almost always annoyed by is the lack of player interaction in games. That seems to be the most difficult thing to achieve in a board game.
It seems typical for German-style board games.
There are so many board games that have little or no player interaction, and this is one of them. Basically, there's very little player interaction. So that's something I come back to. I miss that.
There's a whole school of games that have very little player interaction, and interestingly enough, this is one of the reasons that board games have spread so well, because there's an entire subset of people that don't do well with player interaction. And they want this. They want to sit at the table and do solitaire.
Do their own thing. Yeah, do solitaire.
Connected solitaire, so to speak.
Yeah.
And although it's not my game aesthetic, I do believe it needs to be recognized as its own game aesthetic.
Sure, but there are too many of this type and not enough games where there's actually good.
But you're married to one who's very fanatic about Euro-style games.
Depends on how far
there are
down
Euro-style
the rabbit
games
hole
that have a
you
lot
go,
of player
I'd say.
interaction. That I don't think all Euro-style games are solitaires.
No, not all of them.
But
They usually have a different approach to player interaction.
But it's easier to make a board game that doesn't have as much player interaction.
I definitely know that feeling. I'm working as a volunteer at the Bastard Cafe, which is a board game cafe in Copenhagen with about 4,000 games. And part of our job as game gurus is to recommend the correct game. And for some people, let's say there are five people entering the cafe at a Saturday night, and they're a bit drunk, and they just have to play a social game. And other players that want to play something for 6 hours. For us, it's definitely a skill to read people and to understand. Do you want something competitive? Do you want something to work together on? Because a lot of great cooperative games. And for me, one of the developments that I like is that I do play a lot of board games also on computer, because some of the social games or games with a lot of interaction, there's still some social boundaries. For instance, there are a lot of strategies I would like to try out where if they fail, then I'll just have a boring game for an hour because it's a crazy strategy. And other times I'll just find out how would this game work if I only attack one player, for instance. But that would be somewhat socially unacceptable because it wouldn't be fun for that player. It might not even be fun for me, but it's still interesting to see how the game works. So
and
I'm a great fan of
different online.
Because I play with computer games. Because it
play
wouldn't
with
be
an AI
different
and not
online.
with
Play with AIs.
Nice.
Yeah. So playing with bots, then you're allowed to do the thing that might be that is socially unacceptable when you're just having a nice Friday evening playing board games.
But I must also ask: do you find yourself, let's say, evaluating the cognitive capacity of the guests?
Well, it definitely depends on the game, but yeah. But I think I still have this thing in mind that if I'm playing with humans, that this is still a social activity for me. And there's sometimes at our board game cafe, one of our fellow gurus, he has this idea of a narrative victory, that he might not win due to the rules, but he did something that was in the spirit of of the game, not necessarily the spirit of the social interaction, just doing something stupid because it makes sense for his character, almost role-playing in the board games. And I like this thought about they have a narrative victory. Sorry?
One of those.
Yeah, exactly.
I like when you mix different gaming genres, so it's nice.
Yeah. I remember a specific game of Battlestar Galactica where one person post-game said, I played like a Cylon because that was more fun, although he wasn't a Cylon.
Okay.
The game balance was affected.
There are always those gamers, okay,
yeah.
Or those players, yeah. This is my slide. I have played lots of digital games this week and the last couple of weeks. Even though I don't like the quality of Cyberpunk 2077, I find it amusing. It's amazing to roam around and just soak up the world, soak up the stories, and just live in the world. So
you don't have a day job either, I take it.
Yeah, I have, but I have a couple of hours in the evenings to kill. So yeah, but I never played so much role-playing games as I've done the last couple of weeks. Since Christmas, I played as much real role-playing games as I've done in the last 25 years, I think, and that's really in the right direction.
What would a false role-playing game be?
Computer role-playing games. I've never seen a computer role-playing game that is as immersive as a real board role-playing game. Not close enough.
Yeah, right. We last week you talked to the creator of the board game Suffrage, Swedish board game creator, and this week we have a review up. That's pretty much all I have to say about that. Go check out the review if you like.
Yes. Yeah. And then we're done with that segment. Okay. Let's see. Där. Bild. We have had a major news, gaming related news, when Microsoft is buying the whole of Activision Blizard and King and all the companies on them for 631 million kronor. I think it's, I don't know what
billion.
It's
68.7 billions.
A billion. The Americans and the English keep messing up the what terms they're using to count.
I'm not certain they're the ones messing up.
In our perspective, they are. I think Frank has some statistics.
Yeah, because this Microsoft news has been like a bomb in the digital gaming community. It's because it's a big acquisition, really big acquisition, and the analysts at Global Data Thematic Team has made a comparison of the biggest tech mergers and acquisitions the last couple of years. And as you can see in this slide, Microsoft was on place 2 among the companies in how large a company is in the digital gaming world. And with this acquisition, where they buy the 13th place and merge them to them, this Global Data guys, analysts think that they will take the lead in the metaverse, and that is the main goal for it. But if you take the next slide, you can see that the Swedish news think it's something else. I have to take väldigt låg upplösning på det. In the Swedish news, they think that this acquisition is to make Microsoft like the gaming's Netflix. That the aim is to take the control of the streaming gaming, and that might be as accurate as anything else, I guess. Lastly, I think it's interesting that the PlayStation stock dropped like a bomb when Microsoft made this merger, which is not surprising because PlayStation tend to be quite självupptagen, vad säger man?
Self-focused?
Self-absorbed?
Yeah, self-focused. Yeah, self-absorbed. Yeah. So it's interesting. So it's been a big bomb, really big bomb.
I'm kind of you were saying something?
Yeah, we can clearly see that some people play Cyberpunk, other people live Cyberpunk and are going full megacorp.
Yeah.
I'm kind of fed up with all the exclusivity deals for PlayStation and Xbox, and I don't think it will be any better after this deal. But on a positive note,
more trash war.
Yeah, but on a positive note, I think it will be good for Activision Blizard to have a new CEO in Microsoft, who will be their new CEO after the deal is complete, they said.
I think so too. But do you think it will be they will be able to wash off the bad ink very fast?
Not
or
completely.
How long time do you think it will take before they feel nice again?
I sure hope their employees will get it better though, in some sort.
Yeah.
I mean, the question is, will they make any real changes?
Yeah. And how much better is Microsoft? Because I've heard voices that Microsoft is a quite bad worker place too. So I'm not sure this is changing overnight. I think this is a pure economic bomb.
Hopefully
not much change in the working.
A spotlight to the issue though. I think. You had another company that's not so awful. Blackfisk.
No, really not. Blackfisk is the opposite, I think, because they have been around for quite a while. They have had a good focus on gender-neutral games and on systems that make better safety within the gaming world. If you're familiar with red, green, and yellow light system, that's them that released that. They now published this new Heroes of Kurolea, which is downloadable for free, I think, in a quick start version. And they are releasing a Kickstarter within a couple of weeks to release the full game.
And then I had an interview with Magnus Härenstam during the week about their future projects after they made a press release about urban operations for Twilight 2000. I think we can post a link to that full interview, because they revealed some other interesting details. First, they revealed that they have 4 planned expansions, probably within this year, which we discuss in the interview, and then they will build some futures for Mutant, even though they were kind of vague about it, and that it won't be an actual expansion for the role-playing game. So my guess is as good as yours. And then they confirmed that the Drakar Demoner, the new D&D, DOD, will be in this year, in time for the game's 40-year anniversary. And that the first introduction...
Did he really promise that, though?
They're aiming for it.
Yeah, aiming for it, yeah.
So, and they're really aiming for it, I think, because they really want to make it to the 40-year anniversary of the game. But I hope it won't end up like it did for Cyberpunk 2077, who also wanted to match a specific year, 2020, since the first game was called Cyberpunk 2020. And we all know how that went. But D&D, the first introduction adventure, is already written and under approval, I think, or what it's called, correcture. And we also discussed their plans for virtual tabletop, which is a good discussion we have had about what to call the different role-playing, digital role-playing support. I've organized them in two categories. The top row is actual virtual tabletop platform, which supports the actual playing of the role-playing game. And they have support for Fantasy Grounds, Roll20, and Founder VTT. But the new platform, which we're very fussy about what it would be, is not an actual virtual tabletop, but more like D&D Beyond, which is more of a character storage that you can import to the actual VTT and save your character between platforms. And also to read the rules and meet other players.
But it seemed on the press release they made about Nexus, it seemed to me like they were also implementing playing gear, camera support and support to play the game.
To me, so, but not to actually play
the difference.
Magnus told me that it's not to actually play the game. It's not tools to roll the dice and make the skills checks and such to actually play the game, because they need a VTT to play it.
Okay.
This is the general platform that will be like D&D Beyond, and D&D Beyond has that features. It has become really
like
popular.
Character vault then,
and rules vault and meeting place for the players.
And scenario vault, maybe. Yeah.
If your game requires a rules vault, you have too much.
I think it's a place for them to sell the rules and distribute it digitally. But the board game Tales from Loop, they had a press release that it will be released finally in the 8th of February. And we will have a review for it, of course. Now it's time for our guest.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We did in the beginning, but the sound was quite bad, so we take it from the beginning. Your name is Peter Brodersen, and you're from Denmark. Can I guess that you live in Copenhagen?
That's very exact.
Yeah, I thought so on the dialect. So good. On the English dialect, we have Swinglish and we have Danglish today. So please tell us who you are. Who are you before you start to talk about the project you are here to talk about?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Peter. I'm 43 years old. I do a lot of web development, and I do a lot of role-playing games and board game, as I have mentioned before. I work as a volunteer at the Bastard Cafe in Copenhagen, where we have a lot of board games. And besides that, I've been playing role-playing games since, I think, 1990, where my elder brother also hooked me up at different conventions in Denmark. So I believe my first convention was 30 years ago in 1991, and I've been playing a lot of role-playing since then.
And now you're here to talk about Alexandria.
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, Alexandria is a web-based online library that tries to collect information about our collective hobby, role-playing games and board games. So it's a huge database about all the scenarios that have been playing at the different conventions all over the world, but mainly in the northern countries. So we have information about the scenarios, about the conventions, about the authors, about the organizers at different conventions, and other stuff related to role-playing, such as magazines that were pretty huge in the 90s and 2000s.
And where did this idea come from?
Right?
Sorry?
You also host the specific scenarios, right?
We have information of a lot of scenarios, over 10,000 scenarios, but we try to put them up for download as well. So we have about 2,000 scenarios for download, where about 900 of them are in Danish and about now 900 of them are in Swedish. So we are actually there are only 4 more Danish scenarios for download than Swedish scenarios. So Denmark is about to be overtaken by Sweden.
Where did this idea come from? Were you the founder of this project, or?
Yeah, I created the site, and it went public in 2003. I've been working with it for a couple of years. Well, I think basically there were 2 things in my role-playing club, old role-playing club in Denmark, TRC. A lot of these people in the role-playing club have went to this Danish convention called Festival, and they talked about all the cool scenarios. And it's also a convention that has a lot of traditions about writing down scenarios and nice editing and layout, that kind of stuff. So they talked about all these cool scenarios that I and the cool conventions that I didn't attend. So I tried to follow up on what did I miss, what was the cool stuff about these conventions, and I began attending a festival later on. But then in about the year 2000, I went into a project with some friends where we tried to find the 100 best Danish scenarios. And of course, that might be a controversial statement, but the main work of that was trying to hunt down old paper copies from the 1980s or 1990s and preserve them and get the rights to put them online. But as part of that project, I began to develop Alexandria because we are starting to have a collection of information of great scenarios, what we very subjectively thought were great scenarios, and I thought we could expand this to gather information about all the conventions, all the scenarios, and allowing people with permission to put the scenarios up for download. Of course, it has been more easy the last 10 or 15 years because everybody creates scenarios electronically and can just send a PDF or a zip file if there are sound effects, that kind of stuff. But before that, people typed in their scenarios on typewriters or used very old esoteric formats on an old Macintosh or whatever that might be. So there was more of a quest to
we remember those times.
and doing photocopies where you had a photocopy from a random role-playing book where you just added that picture to your own scenario, that kind of stuff.
No rules applied. So what year did you start with this collection?
Well, we went public, or I went public with the project in 2003 after I've been developing it for a couple of years. For me, I thought the idea of if you have to present something online, if you have a good idea, you also need to have a good execution. So when I went online with it in 2003, there were 2,000 scenarios and I think 1,000 people present, which is a huge amount, and which would encourage people to send in corrections. My thought was, if I create a site that says, hey, we can have information about everything, you just need to tell me everything you've been doing, nobody would like to do that, or 2 or 3 people might want to do that. So it's much easier to have a lot of information where people can say, yeah, that's cool, but you just missed out on that scenario. That would be much more encouraging for people to send in corrections. So in general, I try to been doing that with every new feature. For instance, at the beginning, files weren't online because at that time, a lot of clubs, a lot of other people would be doing their blogs and hosting their scenarios on their own. But that died out a bit, so I began to host scenarios. And when I opened that feature, we also had about 200 scenarios for download, just to show off the idea of having a lot of information.
How do you store all this information? Do you have a big Dropbox or something?
Well, it's as I mentioned, I do a lot of web development. I host. I have my own server hosting. But after a somewhat fatal crash 1.5 years ago, where both my server crashed and my own hard disk at home, my own backup at home also went down. I've been doing a lot of more backups. I also do backups on I think it's Microsoft OneDrive and Google Drive as well. But I'm considering just putting all the thing on a Dropbox if people would think it would be easier just to download everything and make sure that everything is downloadable. Because
how much data is it?
Well, the scenarios are about 24 gigabytes. So it's not a lot if we compare it to modern storage
You're able
technology.
To handle it, yeah.
Yeah. You can put it on USB drive, and I actually did some. I did create some USB drives and just gave them to friends, just to have some code backups for if everything goes down.
You're presenting it downloadable for local server as well, aren't you?
Yeah. Besides, all the code is downloadable on GitLab for those who are interested in development. Where we also have an API where you can download all the information about all the authors of all the scenarios, all the game presentations. You can download that. You have an offline copy you can download and run it locally. And so there's nothing for you to. It's all open. It's all accessible. But I actually would like to create a feature where you can just download all the 24 gigabytes of scenarios with one click if you want to preserve it locally. Because even though we might have an idea that I say everything is open, everything is free, everybody can download everything. That doesn't mean that people will do that. So if there is this huge crash, then we might have an issue. But of course, we have several backups now. But I can only recommend you to download the offline edition just to have if you want to feel safe.
Can you take us on a timeline on the evolvement of this project from 2003 and until now, when it's quite commonly known even in Sweden?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, from about the year 2000, I began the development of it in 2003. It went public, but only for Danish scenarios and Danish conventions. In 2004 and 5, we did some work in trying to create a Swedish edition of Alexandria. But that project stalled a bit at that time. But later on, it was in 2006 we put up scenarios for downloads, and then I think the next 10 years, 5, 6 to 15, there wasn't that much change. It was mainly just maintenance, putting up the new Danish conventions. And also, I felt a bit swamped lately in 2015, so I finally had a lot of editors and other people to help me out, because at the beginning I think I was doing a lot of micromanagement and controlling and thinking this have to be in this exact way, instead of just thinking, well, we just now might take is more just put stuff in there, we can always order it and sort it. The main important thing is we just get up the information in any form it's available. So in 2015, I got a lot of editors, And we began to register board games as well, because there have been a lot of designer board games created for conventions. So not just commercial games, but also board game designs. And in Denmark, we also have a lot of gaming conventions where people design board games just as these like 2 or 3 days game jams where people create stuff, and that was also worth preserving the information about that. But in I think it was 2019, we began expanding more, because obviously there have already been a lot of Danish and Swedish scenarios that were playing at Danish and Swedish conventions, crossing over. So first of all, we translated the site to 5 different languages: Danish, English, Swedish, Norwegian, and German, just to make it more accessible. And then we got this amazing Swede, Henrik Bergendahl, who was a volunteer, who has created and done a fantastic job for the last 2 years, both collecting information about the Swedish scene, the old Swedish convention, gathering up old role-playing programs, typing in from them, and then getting access to these about 800 or 900 Swedish scenarios that he had gotten permission to put up for download. And of course, that made a huge impact in expanding Alexandria to a more international view.
It's really nice. I've been in that Facebook group where he announced this and started to collect it, and it's been an impressive journey to watch when he has gathered the information and how much response he has got. So it's really nice.
Yeah.
What has been the largest challenges during this time?
Well, besides the huge server crash half a year ago, then I think it's for me was keeping the steam and interest up, because at some point, if there's not anything new going on, it's just run-of-the-mill work. Like it's what you say when you just need to enter the scenario of the new scenarios, new conventions. So for me, it was holding up the steam, and that's a cool thing about having editors and out delegating a bit of work. The other thing is it's still getting the knowledge out there, because Alexandria, it isn't a news site; it's more a resource. So there's not a reason for people to check daily on the site. But this also means that there hasn't been much of a community around Alexandria. Alexandria was more describing other communities. So still having people sending information to me and sending information to Alexandria and the editors, that might still lag out, and that's obvious because we still have some work to communicate what we are doing and what we're interested in. Especially, we also have a lot of live scenarios, information about them, and because the communities are different. Of course, there's a lot of overlap with the people playing role-playing, board role-playing game and LARPs, but LARPs still have this tendency to be this one-time setting, and it isn't. They aren't replayed or rerun that much as ordinary scenarios. So there isn't that much information of preserving that specific information, because it was more an event for a lot of people. So
they are often focused around a couple of persons too. I feel role-playing scenarios is more commonly usable, while LARP is more a couple of persons visualizing their visions.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's all worth preserving not only we might not be able to download a product as a scenario might be when we're talking about LARPs, but the LARP community has also have some nice tendencies about documenting more of their process, about their work, helping other LARP organizers to be observant about also all the basic stuff. It's not just about the vision. It's not all about the story. It's also about more practical issues like where people are going to go to the bathroom in the forest, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Hmm.
I have a question about your logotype background. Is it a D20 or how come?
It does indeed look like a flattened D20.
Yeah, it looks like that, and it's supposed to look like that, but actually it's a flattened ball or a D60, but some of the shapes have 5 sides, some have 6 sides. So it's actually the shape that's mostly used at footballs, at ordinary footballs, where you combine 5-sided or 6-sided things. Thought about is that first of all, it's funny because football used to be the antithesis to role-playing games, where there were the geeks and then the jocks. So for me, it's just fun that way. But the other thing is that this is Alexandria is a model. Everything needs to be put into different structures, and they might not be precise. So as if we have a round ball, we have everything out there, and I just try to flatten it out so to create a model of the world, but it's not the world; it's just a model of the world.
It's a real work, time capsule. I think should describe it for the gaming culture in whole. And I find it really interesting that Denmark is beating Sweden in all numbers still, despite ourselves thinking that we have such a rich convention and scenario background.
That's not the case for those of us who know what we're about. Festival is legendary even in Sweden. And there's also, I have to say, an enormous difference in quality. The typical Festival scenario isn't exactly what we get at the Swedish convention, but what Festival does is that they have a focus on quality that we lack. Swedish convention scenarios are, to put it mildly, they are bad. They are very, very bad.
Can you just quickly describe what Festival is?
Festival is a convention in Denmark that just has a higher focus on quality than we generally do in Sweden.
I wanted to say overall that the convention scenarios are bad in Sweden. There are some really good ones as well.
Yeah, there are some really good ones.
Even myself.
I have never found any nuggets. I generally don't play at Swedish conventions anymore because my experiences are so poor. Compared to the Danish scene. So it's not only in the numbers.
It's so many years I was on a Swedish convention, so I can't really say. But I have not been very impressed of the convention scenarios in Sweden. I admit.
I think that the festival community has built up definitely an author fellowship as well, where they do a lot of work. They have a lot of weekends where all the authors meet together, talk about their ideas, do a lot of feedback. There are a lot of playtests with these scenarios. There are a lot of after reports also after festival. This is a bit of an issue usually because after festival, I want to put up the scenarios as quick as possible. But of course, when the authors spend that much time about them, they have we also do a lot of feedback at festival where people do evaluations and also some prizes and awards for the judges that read all the written material and listening to the feedback. But a lot of these authors, they want to just refine their scenarios after festival because they see some of the flaws, some of the
I've never seen any of that intent in the Swedish scene at all. and I don't think people even playtest usually.
But
What?
the thing is that people.
they do.
I don't
They
think
do.
yours experience.
I think you're downing the Swedish
The
a
author,
little bit.
the author probably runs the scenario once or twice if we're lucky. But I don't think the authors of Swedish scenarios have any blind testing. I don't think they run any significant systematic tests. I've had so many scenarios where I've been like, you didn't test this, did you?
We have quite different experience.
The written scenario would usually be played with like 8 GMs. So the written material is written for the game master and not just for the notes for the author himself or themselves. But the thing is that after festival, some of these authors might want to do a version 2 of their scenario, but usually they would never do that. And I have now had this idea that said, let me put up your scenarios now, and now then we can always put up a new edition of your scenario. What I do admire on some of the Swedish scenes is that it seems like, for better or worse, it's there's a lot of concepts where people say, I had this idea, I'm now just going to do it instead of thinking it to the death, because at festival we also have a lot of authors that drop out because of the pressure, because of the time, or because they're not certain in their ideas. And I do like I also like the charm of just having a gimmick or an idea, running a scenario, and when the scenario is done, then you move on instead of. But it's two different worlds. I do acknowledge that.
You can do that when you GM for your friends, but when you gather people at a convention, you also waste people's time if you bring crap to the table. And with your friends, you can do whatever you want. You can taste your crazy gimmicks. But when I show up at the convention, that's a person that's going to burn 6 hours of my very precious convention time. And then I don't want a gimmick or someone just trying something out. Then I want quality.
Isn't that much on how you sell the product too? I mean, if you are clear that this is an experimental game, it's up to the players to join or not, isn't it?
I think so. At festival, they some changes about their time management, where usually a scenario would be 4 or 6 hours long, but they have also introduced these novella scenarios that only take about 1 or 2 hours, which is more open for these gimmicks or quick ideas, where you can say it's if it runs flat, then well, it was nice to try it, but we didn't get bored with it. We didn't waste a lot of hours. It was just a nice experiment. So yeah, definitely you should be aware of your medium, and obviously aware of your participants, aware of your audience.
Yeah.
But I still think it's important for of course, the written tradition might not be the same in different places, but for the sake of history, it's still important to record the scenarios. A lot of the old scenarios, even Danish old very famous scenarios, where people say this is one of the greatest scenarios I played in the 1990s. If you look at this scenario today, you might check
not
out.
Be so impressed anymore.
Yeah, you might not be impressed. You will also look at stuff that is not that acceptable. Stuff like just if you have a board game where a person like Monopoly, a person can get eliminated early, and do they just have to sit around for 6 hours now, or all that kind of stuff. Even stuff like there are no page numbers on the pages in this scenario. These are very small stuff that an editor would check out. There are a lot of these flaws, and it's a good thing to preserve this information about the development of it, not only for to see where we can see how far have we gone from that time, but also for me, I like also when we created the project about putting up the 100 best very subjective view scenarios, it was also to make people understand that the best scenarios in the world might still have issues. You can be inspired from the good part, and you can look at all the bad part, and I want you to say to yourself, I can do that better, because you can do that better. There are a lot of flaws, there are a lot of problems. So putting scenarios out there is not just to put them on pedestals. It's also to allow people to do a fair evaluation of the scenarios themselves.
How much of the scenarios have you read yourself?
I think I read about 200 or 300 scenarios. Not that much as people now. It's probably more, but still not as much as people would expect me to have have read, though. But I've been GMing a lot of scenarios at the festival, for instance. So of course I do pick up.
Can you see any trends lately, or trends through time that you have noticed and want to highlight?
Definitely. I think in Denmark in about 2002 we had this scenario type where you focused on the secondary characters, where a scenario, usually, let's say, a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, that would be 5 or 6 players, but they're always everybody is together all the time. They have the same shared focus, and it's more about the group than the individual persons. And some of these scenarios in 2002 were more focused on let's first of all, let's do more specific scenes, so it's not just a long flow. And we have a scene with a focus where we before the scene we have this collective idea about what's the purpose of this scene. Let's say this is a scene where he discovers that his father is not his real father, and this scene might be stated let's say, okay, this scene only includes 2 of you characters, but the 2 of you who don't play, you play secondary roles. You play other characters, not your own lead character, not your character on paper, but you just you can still help the scene going in the correct directions. I think it was one of the huge things in the Danish scenes in 2002, and I think we've developed on that since then, where we have this this shared ownership and shared responsibility of the theme of the story, where a player can do a bit of intervention and say suggest stuff like, it would be cool if something here happened, and the GM would say, okay, I will handle you that responsibility of we're doing some other stuff. And also that we trust in each other. The game master trusts in the players trust in the player trust in the GM. So the GM might also do stuff might force your character into something, and 20 years ago it would be horrible if the game master would be railroading in you one direction, but now we have a more trust that the game master actually have an idea with this point. Stuff like you say, yeah, I want to go to this tavern, I want to I'm trying to blend in and gain some knowledge, and the game master says, okay, if it's okay with you, I have a great idea, trust me on this one. Let's cut to the next morning. You wake up with huge hangovers. There's somebody knocking on the door. There's this guy just standing out there with a sword and say, okay, are you ready to go? I'm all in for your idea. And you say, okay, that's apparently that happened. But for me, it's about sharing the trust with other persons, and not having
more inclusion now.
Yeah, not having that divide between the game master and the players.
No.
I mean, everybody can participate to the story and the narrative, but it's also more okay to talk about to do some meta talk about a scene. Of course, if you just have a long flow where you're just playing and doing stuff, and then I do that, and I do that, and I do that, there might not be time for that. So the ability to take a step backwards and saying, what's the purpose of that castle? And perhaps also saying, when is this scene ending? Stuff like, okay, this scene ends when he leaves the room in anger. And then when we're all aware, then we don't have to play anymore of that scene, because the main purpose of that scene has been fulfilled.
Yeah. As I said, I haven't been playing much role-playing games for 25 years and started again right now, last couple of months. But I've been listening to lots of role-playing actual podcasts. And I've seen much of what you describe now. I've listened to much of what you describe now and wanted back to the scene because of that, because it's much more including, it's much more telling a story together today than it was before when you had the game master doing the scene for you. A little question about the project itself. How has the role-playing industry been looking at your project, or helped you or not helped you? I'm not really familiar on how the role-playing industry looks in Denmark. I know the Swedish quite good. It's large, has an international acknowledgement. How does the Danish industry look?
Well, I don't think we have that much of an industry at all. We don't do that much in, for instance, new rule books and new role-playing game systems. It might be that all the scenarios and festival, they're more they are not that focused on specific settings or systems or methods. There has been a bit of a revival, mainly with stuff like Apocalypse World and Powered by the Apocalypse, that kind of stuff. But we don't do that much in that regard. I think it's more, if you're going to talk about an industry in Denmark, I think it's more about those who do professional labs and that kind of stuff, where there are a bunch of companies that do a lot of stuff, everything from entertain children, even doing some children's birthday, to having some company projects and that kind of fun. But there isn't that much new systems, that kind of stuff. The cool stuff is, though, that a lot of the old role-playing gamers that created systems in the 90s, they are happy to have their old system put up for download for free at Alexandria. So in that regard, the old people being the old people in the community have been very supportive, and that's lovely.
Yeah, and if you could just make one wish for the nearest future, what would happen with the project? What single event or happening would benefit the project to go further in the future?
I definitely think we need to break into more countries, because we have Denmark pretty good covered, and Sweden has been pretty good covered as well now. But we probably are missing a lot from Norway, England, Germany, and the United States. We've done a huge import of the Intercon from the United States, which really made a dent. I think it's about 1,000 scenarios that were added in the last month. Information about 1,000 scenarios, but we might still be missing some lead people in some different countries that are as energetic as, for instance, Henrik Bergendahl was and is in Sweden with collecting information. So I think I need to find the Peter or Henrik in different countries.
Yeah.
And in any case, of course, there are a lot of stuff in Alexandria that might not be right. So take a look and drop a note. And also, if you are creating a new convention and scenario, just have Alexandria in the back of your mind and drop us a note.
Yeah, we applaud all the work you do here, and wish you much luck in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have we missed any questions? Does anyone have a last question?
I have another question, but I don't think we have time for it now.
Okay.
It is truly, as we say in Swedish, a kulturgärning.
Yeah. It is. It's really important, the work you do. But Daniel, I think you can put in one last question if you have one.
No, there are longer questions.
Okay.
But I want to thank you for your life work. You should be commemorated with a Nobel Prize or something. I think it's really, really important. And I think especially now when Sweden's gaming association dropped the ball with their own Scenariobanken earlier on and lost a lot of our own collective scenarios, then it's even more important having Alexandria who picks up the ball and also now have brought them with magazines, fanzines and LARPs and such. It's a really, really important work. And wish also our national library, what's it called, that collects all magazine. Is it them or Riksarkivet, I think?
Yeah.
Should have done that already.
What happened with Sverok's library?
It's a lot of stuff. It's kind of nasty to go through, but
it went the way of the old library of Alexandria.
But in any case, if people from Sverok still have a backup or anything like that, hit us up. We are extremely interested in picking up everything we can find, and there's still some treasures out there. There's still some gold nuggets waiting to be dug up.
Yeah, and we really hope everybody.
I actually have some in my shelf that I should scan and send.
Yeah,
do it.
And could we post a link where people could submit if they have scenarios that they have the copyright for?
We have a contact link at Alexandria.dk.
Could we post it in the chat? I think. Okay, it's on the webpage at least, Alexandria.dk.
It's coming in the Facebook chat here, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
thank everybody for watching, and thank you, Peter, for coming and telling us about this life project of yours, or actually this life project of ours, because you do it for us gamers, and we thank you for that. And to all the viewers, until next time, next week, we haven't decided if we speak English or Swedish then. This will be an excellent time to evaluate, I think. So goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.